Imagine the talent that my mother had born to her equals a gun. What is it, Trey?
Yo, man, that's the formula.
Welcome back, everybody, to Formula episode 14. Today is January 29th. We're coming back after a couple of interrogation interviews between Trent and I, doing a bit of a deep dive into our stories and how we got here. But as long as we've recorded this podcast, we've talked about bringing guests on and getting some perspective from people like us and people not like us on occasion. But we're ripping the Band-Aid off today with our first guest, Tommy. Tommy, welcome. How are we feeling?
Feeling good. Fresh off a nice work day. I really appreciate being the first guest for you guys. Excited to unpack a lot here.
For sure. Well, yeah, again, thank you. We're super excited to know. Casey and I have been talking about this for a while and thought you'd be a great first guest. So Tommy and I worked at Schneider together. I would say his expertise is sales. And that's a lot what we want to talk about too, but also just him as a high performer all around, understanding who he is, why he's like that. One thing that I think he has an incredible ability at is doing research and then connecting a problem to somebody and then getting the right people involved to make that happen and just having the consistency to do that. So I guess, Tommy, if you want to just do a quick overview of like who you are, where you're from, just a little bit of background as well.
Yeah, so I could take it back where I'm from. I'm from around Midway Airport in Chicago, which is one of the two airports that are in Chicago, the smaller one.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely a Southwest Chicago type of kid growing up, rooting for the Sox, Bears, Bulls, all that jazz. Yeah, pretty tight-knit family, I would say. Just another sister living with me. I have also a half-sister, but she's almost 20 years or 15 years older than me, so wasn't really living with her. But because of that, we only had 4 people in the immediate household.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just grew up in Chicago, went to college eventually in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
City University of Iowa, spent 5 years going to school there. Really had no idea what I was going to do after that, to be honest. Like, I remember being in college and thinking to myself, like, the only reason I'm like doing well or trying to do well in college is so I could stay out here and just like hang out with my friends and honestly just party. And so like I really had no future goals, which is sad to say, but looking back, it's funny. And then yeah, just landed my first corporate job with Schneider, where you and I eventually met, and kind of just took it full force from there and look back at all. Which most of this conversation will kind of be unpacking that experience and inside and outside the life of that, but kind of like a high overview of me, I guess.
For sure. So I guess jumping into then early on, starting at Schneider, tell us just a little bit about like where the market of the industry was at, where it's been at since you started, and just kind of like your philosophies when you first went in to the job. Clearly, you said you didn't have any expectations being in sales, but how did you start to approach it and build your approach that I think you followed through with and built on since you've been there?
Yeah, I think that's important context. So coming into Schneider, I was hearing a lot about the market cycles. And what Schneider is, we're a logistics transportation company. And so all I was hearing is, sometimes it's a shipper's market where, the carrier's taking the brunt of everything, where our prices are down, we're not making as much money and all that stuff. But the good thing is you're coming in at a great time. It's a carrier market. There's a lot of opportunity out there. And that was during the end of COVID. So coming into end of 2021, by the time I hit the sales floor, it was like January to February of 2022. And I start seeing emails, like mass emails saying like just hinting at a market shift. Didn't really know what that meant at the moment, but come to find out like, oh, the market turned the opposite way into a shipper's market pretty quickly. And so I heard a lot of buzz around that, but like I didn't have any customers at the time. I barely was even trying to sell. So like it wasn't affecting me, but I could see it was like impacting like a lot of people around me in a negative way. But I think looking back, that was an advantage for me because I never had to rely on a good market to sell or to perform well. And so I like, of course, I internalized that. I like saw what was going on, but I didn't really let it impact me because I had nothing to lose. I had no customers anyways. So to this day, like I still, obviously being a seller, you want to be knowledgeable in your industry, be able to communicate that with prospects and customers. But I never really take it to heart, and I never really let that impact my motivation, my energy,
Hmm.
and then in turn my performance. Because I mean, I've grown the last 4 years in the same down market, and so I just think it's been a good experience for me, and something that has turned it into kind of like a superpower of just not really worrying about external stuff that I can't really control.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that you do very well is like a lot of people, they think to be good at sales, you need to have all the right things going on. And I mean, a lot of people talk about your patch needs to be right. You need to have all these external things aligned to do well. And I think that's one thing like that it has been something that's always made you stood out to me is that people aren't looking at you and looking for advice just because you did well when everything was going right. You really had to build in a market that is honestly just shit. Like I would, when I was in the market, you couldn't, if you weren't good, you weren't selling. Like, and especially, I'm guessing what you were like 22, 23 at the time coming into this. And so you really have to stand out because if you don't know much about the freight industry, especially he's in the brokerage market, which basically you're using other people's trucks to move goods. And in that market, you have maybe at a good company like 60 to 100 cold calls going in a day to say a director of logistics. Uh, so you really have to do a lot to stand out. And I guess one thing that they always preach is phone calls within any sales organization. I know you don't like to do that. So how, especially when you started out, everyone's pushing you to do calls. What was your mindset on the calls? And, how did you start to see success for yourself? And what was your approach?
Yeah, so with the whole idea with cold calling, especially at the start of, I guess, a sales role and in logistics, like I never, this is, in a higher scope, this is probably like a fault of mine, but I didn't want to sound awkward and uninformed the first time I talked to someone who I need to like eventually sell to. So I didn't want that to be my first impression ever. So that's why I kind of shied away from cold calling, which, other people who are really good at cold calling, they might think is silly, which is totally fair. But I just used the downtime of not having any customers to really research prospects, and before the age of AI, like craft my emails to where they're very intentional, strategic, and specific to the prospect. And to your point earlier, like I made sure through LinkedIn research or other methods, made sure that the contacts who I am reaching out to are the right contacts, and the problems that I'm outlining in my outreach, um, 95% chance that they probably have encountered either that year or recently where, hey, there's a good chance they might hit me back.
Hmm.
How soon into your career did you figure that out? Because obviously, when you're still learning sales and it's all still so fresh to you, you're kind of just doing what you're being told. And from what I've gathered, you pretty quickly wanted to do things your own way. Is that something you picked up from just hearing what you were learning and not thinking it would be successful? Or was it like a trial and error kind of thing that led you to kind of switch gears a bit?
Yeah, I think I'm just naturally stubborn. And again, like some of the stuff I'm saying, like I don't think they're necessarily like right or correct, but it's just who I am. So I'm like necessarily stubborn, and I think like for most of the time, like my way is the correct way. And there are times where I'm definitely proven wrong, and that's a learning experience, right? But I think that's where that came from. Like, you know, I was getting pushed to sell a certain way, but I felt like as long as I put in my all, like, and the intention was pure in terms of like actually selling and building a customer base and doing well for my company, like I'm gonna be able to sell a certain way, that makes sense. So I would say like right away, like that's what I wanted to do. And going into sales, like, I think if I remember, like, my family was like, "I can't really see you doing well in sales. Don't you have to, like, call people?" Because 'Cause I'm notorious for people who know me, like, I don't answer like, I hate talking on the phone. It's not even just, like, in my job, like, I just feel awkward talking to family or friends on the phone, like, I'd rather just text or, like, see you in person.
Yeah.
So, like, there was people, like, skeptical, like, in my actual life that were like, "I can't really see you doing that," and I went into it thinking, like, "I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but, I got a job, I'm fresh out of college, so we'll figure it out."
Not to give too much of your sauce away either, but you talked about intentionally crafting your outreach to get good responses, to get a lot of responses. Again, not to give too much of your sauce away, but is it numbers based you found? Is it like that intentionality with like how the email outreach looks? Is it who you're reaching out to? Or how do you think that you're able to kind of bust through in markets through emails when people would expect to like need a phone call to close deals like that?
Yeah, I would say I I also quickly learned that if I'm only relying on email, like, I'm doing myself a disservice. So, it's really multi-channel communication, and the better I've gotten at my job, the more confident I've become, and not just myself, but, like, our solutions as a company and the people who I can pull into the conversation around me. I probably have more confidence in that than actually myself, to be honest, but, that's what, like, helps, in the end. But I would say, like, that confidence level helped me be more aggressive, I guess you could say, in my outreach. So, what I mean by that is just the frequency of how many times I'm pinging this person or this team and in different ways. So, I will craft that email, but I'll also add them on LinkedIn and send a chat or reference that email. Same thing, whether it's through text or Teams chat or something like that. So I think like multi-channel and like being aggressive, especially in a down market, is pretty huge because as long as you have some sort of information in your outreach that you fully believe is like valuable to them in the end, I don't see it as like pestering or annoying. It's like I am trying to like share value, like whether it is like a specific customer story that's, you know, a customer that's in their industry or just sharing details on the market in general. So that's where that mindset I think comes from.
And with that, so how how are you learning these skills? Where are you going to find and to build, your sales strategy? Because it is, especially when I talk to you about it, it's everything you do has a purpose. And I feel like you're also somebody that is always trying new things to expand your abilities. Is that something that you just learned? Like where are you finding information, and then why are you even so willing to try always?
Yeah, I would say I didn't even realize this when before I got this job that like I think the most exciting parts of the job for me specifically is like learning a new or different sales strategy, trying it out and having it work. Like that to me, like it doesn't have to be like an actual close. It could be, oh, this got me in touch with the right person. This got me a conference call or this pushed the deal or this buying process further because, something different I tried, further than it could have before. So like little wins like that based off learning different strategies and trying them out. I've learned like that's what pushes me in this job. That's what makes it super fun. And I didn't know that about myself until getting into the weeds of the job, I would say. So yeah, to go back to your question about where I get, I guess, you know, new information. I'm I don't like to read, so I'm more of like an audible type of learner, so I'm always listening to podcasts or YouTube videos, mostly and it's funny, mostly like with tech sales because I think tech sales is a bit more, I don't know, it's probably the wrong word, but like advanced in how they sell. They're probably touching more divisions in certain companies that they sell to, but I know I could take at least some of what they're doing and implement it in my own way in logistics. So I would say that like a lot of LinkedIn personalities too. So I would say those are the three major, I guess, media platforms: LinkedIn, YouTube, and podcast episodes on my phone.
And Formula, right? That's your number one listen.
Yeah, it's about to be. No, I actually have, like, listened to probably you said you had, what, 14 episodes? I've probably listened to 10 at least since Trent
Oh,
sent me that, like, 2 weeks ago.
I appreciate that. Yeah, hopefully you're getting some value out of it. Something I wanted to underline, and it wasn't an answer to that question, but it was an answer to the previous question because I think it was a gold mine and it was a way I'd never really heard anyone explain it. But when I asked about your process and kind of a bit of your sauce and your outreach, you mentioned if you truly feel you're providing value, then that's when your confidence increases. So when you're doing your outreach emails, you're crafting them around real value to the people receiving it. And I think that's something that Trent and I have covered in a lot of different instances. It's like this element of imposter syndrome where you start to lose that once you truly feel confident in what you're delivering. And like outreach, I imagine nerves primarily come from you trying to make calls or send emails when you're like, know that what you're selling or what you're offering is bullshit. So I thought that was an interesting and like cool perspective on reverse engineering, learning the product as best as you can and then crafting it around something that they need to respond to or that they'll most likely respond to. So I don't know if that's like I'm not a sales guy, so maybe that's just news to me, but I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, that is a great call out. It makes me think of so there's this seller, Nate Nesrella. His whole mantra is, like, selling within the company and champion selling, but he had, like, a great follow-up diagram, I guess you could call it, where I think one of the end of the diagrams, it was asking you a question, like, if you sent this email or this follow-up email to any prospect, could they understand it? If yes, then you need to do a better follow-up because it needs to be super specific in the value
Yeah.
and the information you're sending to that person. So, that always stuck with me too, but it also goes in hand with what you just called out.
I guess then speaking to how you're really trying to provide value, one thing we've talked a lot about when it comes to sales is there's a lot of there's a bad rep with salespeople. A lot of them are trying to get something over on you or, whatever the thing may be. In especially in the freight market, they say, I'm slinging freight or I had a huge rip on this, which basically just means you had a big margin on it for a win. How do you look at that? And is that something, are those phrases that are they in your vocabulary even? And, are you really trying to provide value or are you just trying to make money?
Yeah, so that's a good, um, question that can go into, like, my mindset about the job.
Hmm.
What pushed me in this job originally was I wanted to be I didn't wanna look stupid, like, internally.
Yeah.
So I started a ton of research, like, my first week, but also, like, I didn't know this about myself. I was super, super competitive, so I was always looking at leaderboards, and I just kind of would just talk trash to myself internally and be like, "Dude, like, you're way better than this. Like, I know for a fact you put in more work than this guy, and he's beating you. Like, you gotta clean that up in the next 3 months. Like, you gotta be over
It
this guy."
sounds like you, Trent. You guys have the same voice in your head.
Yeah. But so I would say competition and not wanting to look stupid, and also, like, I just wanted to be respected internally at Schneider. Like, people hear my name and be like, "That's a really, really good salesman. Like, he's good at his craft." Nowhere nowhere in that was money to me. Like, I just wanted respect. I wanted to compete. I knew money would follow. Like, if I'm at top of leaderboards, like, I don't know how much that would be, but, like, it'll be there. But it wasn't important to me, and it's still not, like the end goal to me. So when I think of, in relation to your overall question, like when I think of those comments and like actually providing value to the customer, what I've learned also by hearing other podcasts and just other sales success stories is like I didn't know this to this extent, but like a lot of people that I've listened to, they're like, everything I do is in service for the customer. Like we need to be on the customer's timeline. Like everything I do internally is for them and really being a servant for the customer. And I thought I was doing that well, but hearing some of these guys like talk about it, I'm like, oh, I don't think I am dedicated enough to my customers or prospects. And so it's a room of improvement for me, but I would say I'm more on that side than just, the money grab because to me it's not really important. I want to be respected internally, but also to the customers I do close, my prospects I do talk to, like they can tell that I really care about their success too.
Oh, go ahead, Casey.
I was going to do a bit of a transition. If you have something on that response, you can go first.
No, no, you can go. You can switch it up.
You just talked about success a bit. And I mean, just from getting to know you already, it sounds like you have a little bit more level headedness when it comes to like goals and successes and things. What does, not to put you on the spot, but what does success look like to you as you continue to grow in Schneider? Like, if money's not a big driver, is it position at that specific company? Like, do you see yourself working your way up at Schneider? Do you want to be in a different industry? Like, continuing to be the best at Schneider and working your way up there, but like, what's kind of the next step from where you're currently at?
Yeah. I would say what really drives me is probably the experiences that I can gather and learn from by continuing to sell at a high level and pushing bigger deals with bigger companies. I think that could only do well for me in the long run in terms of if I do pivot, want to pivot in terms of leadership or a different job or a different role, like I have those experiences under my belt. It can grow from a professional aspect. But right now, like what success looks like to me is I'll go back to the leaderboards. Like that's where I'm still at in my career is like just super hungry and competitive. And so I finished number 9 in our division overall this year. And I know I have the talent to be top 3. I know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when and just how much work I put in to get there sooner. So I would say it's my next goal. And after that, I'm not sure, but we'll have to get there first.
Yeah. Speaking about competition, one thing that I've heard you mention several times is what excites you on some of the customers that you close. I know one that you've talked about in extended forms is when somebody can't close somebody and you get them and you close them. You know, talk a little bit about the mindset behind that and why that's something that drives you and what that means to you.
Yeah. It's just another form of competition, I would say. Um, to me, it's like, oh, if this other really good seller and someone I respect didn't close them for whatever reason, um, it's an opportunity for me to do that and kind of learn from their maybe not mistakes, but just experience and be the one to close it. That's just like another competitive mindset thing, I would say. Another reason to push me, but yeah, those are also like really fun experiences for sure. But of course, like I don't keep track of this, but I'm sure it's happened to me, you know? So
Yeah.
that happens to everyone. So like it's just finding those little nuggets of fun and competition, like you mentioned, like that's always something I'm looking for sure.
And it's definitely something that goes across the board. I think most sellers that I've talked to get excited about those types of things because it is like a little internal competition. And it seems like, especially with sales, you have to gamify things. You have to keep it competitive. You have to find new ways to have fun with it because it can be hard and it is hard. So, uh,
I had a question for Casey.
Yeah.
I was going earlier in one of my answers, I was talking about platforms and how I learn like to be, just a better seller, just different strategies. Is there like a same marketplace for like SEOs? Like, are you doing kind of the same thing in your role? Is there people who are that have a platform that are saying, hey, this is something new you could try as an SEO that might bring you better results? Or like, do you have any experience either doing that or following different platforms that do that?
Yeah, I mean, like LinkedIn's a good place for it. I've been kind of intentional about building my network up, both virtually but in real life. I candidly don't do as much like YouTube channel or like podcast stuff about SEO because I'm just so in it. I think that I've gotten lucky in my time working in the professional space in SEO that I have colleagues and mentors, and I also just balance so many different versions of SEO in real life that working with different clients in different industries and on different responsibilities with SEO that I'm always just kind of thrown to the wolves and having to, research and figure it out as is. So I don't know. I mean, from like an ongoing perspective, candidly, like when I don't have to think about SEO, I don't. And I'm to the place now where I'm still constantly challenged. Like I don't know everything about it. I think it's impossible to be a full expert because every website's different and, every business is different and every issue that we run into is typically different. But I think like the foundation and like what I've learned from working with super complex clients and, working with sites that are millions and millions of URLs and making decisions based on, sales strategies on e-commerce sites that make such a big impact. I'm learning from doing it rather than like having to tap in to learn about it. So, and Trent can maybe speak to this a bit too. Like we started having sessions when we started talking about him selling for Visible about what his sales strategy would look like. And it started off with me kind of giving my input by saying, like, here's how it should be sold. And then that transitioned into let me just teach you about SEO and let you build a sales strategy around it. So I don't know. It's things like that. I think that like help me teach it. Like like I have to learn, the ins and outs of it in order to help Trent understand. And then Trent does a good job. I think about this all the time, Trent, when I do stuff now, like, href lang or like XML sitemap stuff. It's like super complex technical issues. But I think about when I was teaching it to you, you'd kind of regurgitate back what you'd say, so here's what I'm gathering that you're saying, and then kind of like spit it back to me, and I'm like, oh, that's true. I never thought about it that way, but like that's accurate. So Tommy, I know that's a runaround way to say like, yeah, I don't really listen to podcasts about SEO, but that's kind of how I continue my education, I'd say.
No, that's really good insight. It was a perfect answer because, like, I was trying to picture myself as like in that position or other positions in general. Like, it's always cool, like, just knowing like how other people advance in their careers and their crafts, in different ways. So appreciate
And then
it.
similar to you guys, I just have worked with a lot of people who suck at it, unfortunately. So even in creating Visible, I've never wanted to say, an agency, because like in my head, agency is such a bad connotation. So we call it a studio because it specializes in one thing specifically, and it's something that we're super good at. So it's like, early on, I saw what people do a bad job at in this world, and it's made me want to do it differently. So similar perspective to, you know, you taking different approaches and kind of Trent doing the same thing. So some parallels, even though it's a pretty different world.
I think one thing that segues into then too is speaking about preparation for you. Obviously, you have done a ton of research on your industry, all that stuff, but going into a meeting and knowing about who the person is across from you, what you want to present, what does preparation look like for you and how much time are you spending on it before meetings or, even messaging people?
Yeah, I would say it's different based on where you are in the sales process. So discovery call is probably like an area where you can prepare a lot of, obviously, but the call could go completely sideways or not what you're expecting because we typically want the buyer to talk 80%, 70% of that call,
Yeah.
because we want to learn as much as possible. So sometimes we can do all the research on what the company is, what the past, the most recent notes on who touched the company last, the point of contact we're even going to talk to, and maybe think, this is what they're going to want to talk about. And it could be like totally different. Sometimes I even like to offer the chance of like, hey, before this call, we want to be good stewards of your time. And in order to do that, like we'll just need to know like what subjects you want to touch on, just so we can gather some loose information in the meantime. So I'll use that lever, especially for discovery calls, just so we're not completely taken aback of what they want to talk about. But yeah, definitely a lot of focus on the company and where they might be in terms of their supply chain issues or goals, and the person for sure that we're talking to. But I would say, the further into the buying process, the easier it is to prep because you leave off. Okay, these are your due outs for each side, um, and then this is the next call when it's gonna be. This is what we're gonna talk about. So it's easy to prepare for that. It's just like making sure you're accountable, and you're holding your team accountable because at that point you're like a project manager. So you're constantly like pinging and talking to your leader and other people who might be integrated in that process at that time. I actually have a really good example, a big prospect I'm trying to close. We talked to them yesterday, and I actually got grilled by the guy by not doing enough prep before the call because this is our second or third call, and I appreciated it. Like I'm not mad at him. I think there's a little bit of miscommunication, but it was cool to see because I've never been challenged like that from a prospect of saying, "Hey, we're not moving fast enough." Usually, it's me like trying to be like, "Hey, like, can we get going?" Blah blah blah. But yeah, it was a fun experience. But yeah, he said that we weren't moving fast enough. He wants to connect me and him one on one, to make sure the next call everyone's prepared. That's how like unprepared you were. But yeah, you'll run into situations like that, and it brought a new look to me in terms of like, oh, maybe I wasn't doing the best internally that I usually do or that I could, and now it's just a new perspective for that deal, for that specific deal going forward.
Yeah. On the accountability piece, one thing that I've heard you talk about is accountability on both sides. Internally is one thing, but externally too. You've Can you just speak on your philosophy of accountability throughout the sales cycle too?
Yeah, so making sure that both teams are just following through with their action items throughout the process and latching on to someone from the prospect who's going to be one, your champion, two, who has enough influence in their team to sway and to move things forward, but three, who's like engaged with you and someone you can get updates from like on the side, and whether it's, on the side from conference calls or from emails, someone you're texting or instant messaging, like someone who you could hold accountable, but also like you could also build trust in that way before business even starts. So you can update them, hey, I'm going to send you whatever document is needed, whatever, by the end of Tuesday. And you follow through with that. You do it by the end of Tuesday. You might even do it earlier. I don't know. But you keep sending them updates on the side and keep following through. And by the time you get business, maybe it's months down the road, but you've followed through with everything you've told them. They already have a tremendous trust in you that you're gonna get things done. And by that time, it might even feel like you've been business partners already when you haven't even had any actual business. So it's a good way. Holding accountability on both sides is a good way to also build trust.
Yeah, I've one last thing and then I'll let Casey jump in. I've
Okay.
heard you explain it as really as a seller, you're not really selling anything. You're just there to keep everyone accountable and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do on both sides. And most people will let someone on the other side or a prospect go. They said they were going to do something and they didn't do it. And then you just don't want to push them too far. And really, you're just trying to keep everything on schedule to go. And I think like you've shown me email chains where you'll message somebody 8 times because they said they were going to do something and you're really the person that, hey, I did this, you said you were going to do this, let's keep it going. And but in a respectful way too, whether that's texting, calling. And I see what you're saying though, it really does build trust.
Yeah, and I've learned something really cool and special that I haven't been able to try because I just learned it this week. This guy was talking about executive sponsorship. So he said he walks away from deals that don't have executive sponsorship because what he's learned is like if externally they have an exec who's gonna look over the whole project, because it does touch different teams, right? It touches procurement, logistics, purchasing, whatever have you. So you would need an executive sponsor to look over all that, to call like balls and strikes is what he says, just to keep it moving. He even said like he gave a real life example of an executive telling him, sometimes we won't even get the right information or we might not make the right choice, but it's more important that we're moving along rather than getting stuck. So that's something I want to start trying, is getting that executive sponsorship, because you mentioned the time where I followed up 8 times. Well, maybe if we have an executive, included, I won't need to do that. So that's something that I'm looking forward to being able to try, but something also cool that I learned that I wanted to share that kind of entangles with that.
I love that. Something I was going to ask, it's still kind of in the same vein as accountability. When we were prepping today, Trent brought up something about you that I also try to be good at, and that's bringing experts in when necessary. Talk about why you think it's important to kind of stay in your lane, specifically in sales, and maybe an example of when you knew that someone else needed to be brought in and you needed to not try to extend your expertise in something that you weren't actually good at.
Yeah, I have no problem not overextending myself.
Yeah.
Like, any excuse I can to bring someone else in, like, I'm all for it, honestly. But I think that's always been the case for me. Like, I just feel comfortable and more confident when there's someone else knowledgeable with me. For our job specifically, it's pretty easy to identify who to bring in and when. Just buzzwords, like a certain offering that or a service that we do, I'll bring in that specialist or someone that leads that team. If it's like EDI API connection, no chance in hell am I gonna talk about any of that. So that's pretty easy to like identify. So thankfully, like my job, I think my sales job is probably a little bit easier to bring in people and identify when than maybe others. But yeah, that's something that I love doing and for sure helps push deals forward more than probably anything, because I'd rather not waste their time, with me guessing, oh, maybe we could do this. We're not being transparent and just saying we could and having to figure out on the back end. Like I don't want to do that to them. So how would you said you like doing that, Casey? So is it different for you because how your question, it seemed like it might be a little bit more complex for you on who to bring in and when.
Yeah, I think a lot of the work that I do, or the complementary services, I would say, are driven by SEO, like website builds, content strategy, paid campaigns sometimes even are typically driven by the organic strategy. So it's really easy for the lines to get blurred, especially when clients don't know what they want. And we talked about this a bit, like when Trent or when we went through my background, but I used to do website builds for years and years and years because everybody knows they need a website, but doesn't necessarily know it takes something more than making it look pretty to perform well. So the website was always my in, but then SEO is what I was actually good at. So it took me kind of getting past the point of saying yes, 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 because I saw the dollar amount attached to that project, to say, well, if it's not something driven by what I do and I'm not bringing someone in to do the other pieces, I'm not going to get too in the weeds, and it's going to be worth my time. So I think that makes sense from a sales perspective, how there's a little bit more streamlined of a process. Like they start talking about stuff that's not in your lane, like it's easy to bring in those specialists. So obviously varies by industry, but still like a good principle to have to not overextend yourself when not needed. In the case of sales though, like is there benefit from like a commission perspective? Like would you get more of the cut of the sale if there was less people involved, or does it not really work like that?
For us specifically, it doesn't work like that. I'm not sure about like Salesforce, for example, or like tech sales perspective. So I don't know, Trent, if you know the answer to that for your side.
Typically, those people, they might get like a commission based on like a percentage after a close, but for the most part, they just pay them very well so that they will spend
It's
all
not
their
the same.
time doing that. Yeah. But yeah, when you are bringing in some of those specialists, Thomas, I think a lot of people bring them in and are just like, "Hey, do your thing." How do you try to get the most out of the specialists to really actually push the deal forward?
Yeah, I think that's part of like selling internally. So I think you need to give them as much detail as possible. So hopefully you get that by that point that you bring them in. So a lot of detail, a lot of context. I think context matters a ton. What personality they're selling to, who's going to be on the opposite end of that call, and where are we at in the sales process? How big of an opportunity can it be? You know, so just things like that. I would say just keeping them up to date, getting them excited, and then same thing in terms of like what I mentioned about executive sponsorship. Like same thing on our end internally. Like if I can get a subject matter expert in, and then have like my leadership, my VP, excited about the opportunity as well, and kind of overseeing it, seeing if we're doing the right things, moving it along, it helps keep those subject matter experts, accountable too, because I'm not their leader. Like you mentioned, they're probably not getting commission off that deal, but if I can get their leader excited about it, it's probably beneficial.
It's a lot more of playing that internal game of truly working as a team. So it's almost like you're more of a quarterback at the end of the day then, and really making sure that all the levers are being pulled and, looking at the full chessboard and seeing how the moves need to happen.
Yeah, I would say my magic is behind the scenes, funny enough, as like a seller, like a customer facing role. Like when I have subject matter experts on the call, like the more I have, the less I talk naturally. But like even if I have one or two, like I'm barely talking on the call. But I make sure the customer knows, like, to go to me if they need anything, of course, and I'm the one orchestrating behind the scenes, and I think that's for me specifically as a seller, like, that's where my magic is. There's
Mhm.
tons of other great sellers who are gonna dominate calls, and that's their magic, you know? Maybe they were g great at both.
Yeah,
Those are really special guys, in my opinion. I wish I was good at both, but
fair enough. Fair enough. I guess one thing that we did want to cover too, and something that we want to continue to ask people is who are some of your influences growing up outside of family that really left an impact on you and that maybe you stole some of their attributes or really were like I want to do that thing that they do.
yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have a good answer because, I mean, I was always been a sports fan.
Yeah.
And there's Chicago sports legends who, like, I've grown up watching, but I guess I didn't really, like, internalize them, doing great things in sports and being like, "I wanna do that one day," or, "I wanna be that good at something one day."
Yeah.
Because going back to what I said about college, like, I was telling myself, "I'm fine making 35, 40K a year and marrying a nice girl and probably hating my job, but I'm gonna have a great life outside of work."
Yeah.
I don't wanna be high performing in my role. So, like, growing up, I never saw myself or really had ambition to be, like, a high performer in my job. Um, so I guess I wasn't internalizing that from, like, watching sports and all that and, like, getting or finding mentors or people to look up to in that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say it's a weird answer,
Which
but I would say that is my answer. I don't know how to answer that, but just to give you context of, like, where my mind has been at most of my life and how, like, drastic of a change it's been since, like, jumping into this role.
What shifted for you then?
The comp the competition. It's funny, like, I grew up playing sports, but they're always team sports, and I was like, "I'm happy if I do well, but we lose." Like, not selfishly in terms of, like, I'm only gonna look out for myself, but I'm like, if I do well, if I play well and I'm playing for the team and
Yeah,
we lose, it's a team sport, it's out of my control. So I wonder, like, being in sports, or be it in sales, like, I see it as like a one-on-one sport. So I wonder to myself, like, if I was in wrestling or boxing, for example, growing up, would I have been a beast? Because, like, I would have been focusing on just beating this one person in front of me, you know?
yeah.
So I would say the competition and just finding a love of learning something that can bring me success or instant or delayed gratification. Both are nice. So I would say those two things for sure.
On the topic of learning, and then we have a couple other questions that are not super sales based, but something we talked about at the beginning was how sales could be taught differently or how you have a different perspective on how it should be done. Is there any takeaways that you can give that you've picked up from all of your time researching and learning that you think is good to know that's different than what you learned maybe early on in your career?
Yeah. There's a ton. Like Schneider and logistics is like I haven't sold any in any other industry, but I would imagine it's so different. Trent, you have like way more visibility to this than I do in terms of like how different it is, but I think logistics as a whole, it's like stuck in a certain age of not only selling but a lot of stuff. So the ages of picking up the phone, calling someone, and getting a deal in super quick is gone. And I think there just needs to be more visibility on more complex selling and selling bigger deals because it is being done at Schneider and logistics. It's just from what I've seen, there's not enough visibility on how they happen. Um,
Mm.
and making people who are coming into this company believe like they can do that too. They just need to follow not a blueprint, but they just need to aim higher in terms of their ambitions and just, I don't know, demand more of themselves and learn from people who have done it.
I think that's an issue across the board though for any industry is like it's still at the end of the day is the call metrics. All it's all metric based, which I understand. But it is also there is key things that I think go across the board that can be taught, kept focused on that will lead to success as well. So
Absolutely.
Thomas, do you take your work home with you at the end of the day, or do you feel like you do a good job at shutting it off once you're logged off for the day?
I used to have a lot of trouble with shutting it off like mentally from a mental health aspect,
Yeah.
but I'm a lot better at that now. I feel like I do shut it off, but I am like I enjoy working and enjoy when I listen to a podcast and it's after working hours and I hear something that I'm really excited about, like I do want to hop on my laptop and research a little bit more, like craft up an email or something like that. So I will like here and there check on my laptop when I'm like not really doing much. But overall, I feel like I'm totally fine shutting down my computer at 4:30. If I don't touch it again until the morning, like I'm not beating myself up over it. And in the past, I did. Um, So I think I overall I think I do a good job, but I'm also happy with the fact that I don't view working after hours as like working. It's if I'm doing it, it's because I want to do it. I'm having fun.
Love that. We talk about that a lot. And like I mean, we're not wrapping up quite yet, but I just wanted to say like I appreciate your perspective on a lot of this stuff. I feel like you're almost right in between Trent and I on your perspective on some things. And I think it's good to see, we spend so much time talking about entrepreneurial suits or entrepreneurial pursuits and just this like ambiguous want to do things that we don't really have direction in. And you seem to have a very specific path, something that you love learning about, a craft that you have enjoyed perfecting and growing since you've been in your career. So I don't know. I just have been a fan to your answers to a lot of these questions so far. So I appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys too. I could say the same thing with the 10 episodes I've watched. Like, I know Casey, you mentioned like you like episodes to feel like a long conversation instead of like segmented parts. And a good thing that you guys do a great job of that. It feels like if I were to watch your episodes back to back to back, it does feel like a very long, thoughtful conversation. So I am a fan of the podcast and your answers as well. And one thing I really do appreciate, you guys go into depth and like take your time with answers that I would just blow by. But it's like very, very cool to see a different way on how people think and answer questions. So I've also
We're good to
learned.
have fresh blood too.
Yeah,
Trent and
appreciate it.
I just yap all day long. I like wonder listening back to all of them, like how much we cover the same topics repeatedly, and we're still finding that balance too. So I appreciate the feedback because yeah, we want to make them feel natural. Like we want to feel like we're just coming up here and chopping it up about what's going on in our lives, but there being some sort of through line too with our perspective and bringing you in. I feel like has really helped with that.
Appreciate it. I'm excited to see what other guests you guys bring on for sure, and how like yeah, how different the podcast goes, and depending on what they do for work or what you guys focus on the episode, it might be outside of work. Who knows? But it'd be cool to see.
Speaking of that, is there anybody that it can be really in any background or pursuit that they may have, but just somebody interesting that you think we should talk to?
So they are going to be Schneider related because that's all I know. Of course, like Austin Trent, like he's gonna provide so much cool value and stories. I know you mentioned Radder in one of the episodes, bringing him on. It would be super
Yeah.
cool. He's like one of the most blunt guys I've ever ever met, but he brings a ton of knowledge and value too. So I would say those two guys. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't really think of one else outside of Schneider because all the people I like connect with outside, like I just listen to them. I don't have a talking relationship with them. They're just like sales guys who do podcasts and stuff. So,
Well, what about if you did though? Shout out some of those guys that you'd want to talk with one day.
man, Ian Koniak, Nate Nasrella, Scott Ingram, who else? Kyle Asray. All these guys have no idea who I am, but like they've done a lot for me in my career. So shout out y'all.
Is there anything that you did want to cover that you didn't think we got to?
Nah, man, just it's cool to have almost the NFC North Division in this call.
You're a Bob, man. I should have
The
known.
rivalry comes out.
This man texted me the week before. Hey, man, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to end your guys' season.
Tommy, you catch Trent on that podcast talking about wearing his Packers turtleneck and roasting the Vikings, and then they got squashed a couple days later by the Bears.
I didn't catch that one, but that sounds it sounds like Trent's been taking L's all year. Maybe it's time to switch teams. I don't know.
Hey, man, I'm a
Don't
Cubs
come
fan.
over here.
I'm a
Don't come
Cubs
over
and
here, bro.
Blackhawks fan. Yeah, Vikings, you got really nothing going on. You should change teams, man.
I know. It's
Got
it's
9.
just by default, bro. I got nothing better, but we're
Hey,
rooting for
but
the Wolves.
the
Yeah.
Timberwolves with Ant. I'm a
Shouts
Wolves
out.
fan too.
Yeah. Bucks though.
I mean, Bucks are cool, but we're toast, man. I don't know what the hell they're doing over there.
Amir Coffey's not putting on for the boys.
No.
Just to wrap it up here, Tommy, anyone in life that you'd like to give flowers to? We kind of went through maybe inspiration, people that you maybe learned from growing up, but this one can be family, friends, people that keep you going.
Yeah, no, real quick, I would just say like my mom growing up, she's an immigrant. She came from Guatemala at the age of 16, I believe. So just seeing her, we're hearing I guess stories of that, life and the stories that the things that she went through and what she's had to do to be where she's at now and raise a family. It's always super cool to remember. And it was great to have her in my life and an inspiration. And I would just say now, like my girlfriend Jalissa, it's been great to have her, and I've learned a lot from her in terms of feedback on not just feedback, but like just how she operates as a person, and just taking things from her in terms of whether that be finances or lifestyle or anything. I've learned a ton from her, and I've feel really grounded around her every day. So I would say those two for sure. Those are the ladies in my life that keep me pushing, and my sister too. Both of them. So shout out to the ladies in my life, I would say.
Yeah,
Dope.
love that.
Gotta give flowers to the ladies.
Valentine's Day coming up. Don't forget, boys.
Can't
Exactly.
forget. Mabel's Flower Truck. Put in your pre-orders now.
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
Perfect plug. Perfect.
Anything else, Trent? Anything else to close out with here?
No, I just want to say I'm very appreciative, Thomas, and I'm sure we'll have you on again at some point. But thank you so much for jumping on and for going through this with us. I think you are somebody that has just pushed me to be a lot better, and to think differently. And I just love the way that you think. I love the way that you approach things and how you're always trying something new. And yeah, I know you, like you said, you're going to be in that top 3. I'm surprised you didn't do it this year, and I'm excited to see you to get there and then to see what's next for you too. So really appreciate you. And yeah, it was great.
Appreciate y'all, boys. Trent, it's always a pleasure. We have to have another date night with all of us again. That was a great time. Casey, great meeting you. We're gonna stay in touch, man. I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing with this podcast, but I'm gonna be following you guys for the long run and seeing what else you guys cook up. So holler at me if you want an episode part 2. Let's see some more guests hop on.
For sure.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, appreciate you. Episode 14.